The kitchen smelled like burnt garlic and desperation. I scrubbed the same spot on the marble counter for the third time, my knuckles raw and aching, watching the pink streaks fade under the harsh overhead lights. The restaurant, Il Crepuscolo, was the kind of place where a single appetizer cost more than my weekly rent, where crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across white tablecloths, and where girls like me were supposed to remain invisible. I was good at being invisible. My uniform hung loose on my frame, the black fabric swallowing what little shape I had left after months of choosing between paying rent and eating proper meals. Tonight, I'd chosen rent. Again. My stomach had stopped growling hours ago, resigned to its emptiness like an old friend who'd learned not to ask for much. "Table 7 needs water," Marco barked from the kitchen doorway, his thick accent making the words sound like an accusation. "And don't just stand there like a ghost. Move." I moved. I always moved when someone told me to. The dining room hummed with the low murmur of wealth, silk dresses rustling, expensive cologne mixing with the scent of truffle oil and aged wine. I weaved between tables with my head down, refilling crystal glasses with practiced efficiency, making myself small, making myself nothing. That's when I felt it. A shift in the air, like the moment before lightning strikes. The conversations didn't stop exactly, but they changed, became more careful, more measured. I glanced toward the entrance and my hands went still, water pitcher suspended mid-pour. 3 men had entered. No, 2 men flanked a third, and it was the one in the middle who seemed to pull all the oxygen from the room. He couldn't have been much older than 30, but he carried himself with the kind of authority that made age irrelevant. His suit was black, not the cheap black of my uniform, but the kind of black that absorbed light, custom-tailored to a body that moved with predatory grace. Dark hair swept back from a face too beautiful to be safe, all sharp angles and full lips set in an expression of bored indifference. But his eyes... God, his eyes were the color of expensive whiskey, amber and gold and dangerous, scanning the room with the lazy assessment of a man who knew exactly how much power he held. I realized I was staring. Worse, I was still pouring water into a glass that was now overflowing onto the pristine tablecloth. "Idiota!" The woman at the table jerked back, designer dress splattered with droplets. I'm so sorry." I grabbed a napkin, my hands shaking, making it worse. The woman's husband stood, his face reddening, and suddenly Marco was there, his grip bruising on my upper arm. Scusa, he apologized to the couple, already dragging me backward. "She is new, very clumsy." "She ruined my dress!" the woman shrieked. "This is Valentino!" The room had gone quiet now. Everyone was watching, including him. Those amber eyes found mine across the dining room, and I felt the impact like a physical touch. He didn't look angry or amused or even particularly interested. He just looked, and somehow that was worse than any expression would have been. "You're done," Marco hissed in my ear, hauling me toward the kitchen. "Finished. Get your things and get out." "Please," my voice cracked. "Please, I need this job. I'll pay for the dress. I'll work extra shifts. With what money?" He shoved me through the swinging door. "You think I don't know you've been taking home leftover bread? You think I'm stupid?" Heat flooded my cheeks. The bread had been destined for the trash anyway, day-old focaccia that no customer would touch. But taking it still felt like stealing. Everything felt like stealing when you had nothing. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Sorry doesn't pay my bills." Marco jerked his chin toward the back. "Out. Now. I'll mail your last check." We both knew he wouldn't. I stumbled toward the employee area. My vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. Not here, not in front of everyone. I could fall apart later, in the tiny room I rented above the laundromat, where the walls were so thin I could hear Mrs. Chen's television through the floor, and the heat never quite worked. My locker held almost nothing, a worn cardigan, my phone with its cracked screen, the book I'd been reading on breaks. I shoved them into my canvas bag with shaking hands, trying to calculate how long I could survive without a paycheck. 3 days? 4, if I was careful. The kitchen door swung open behind me. "Signorina." The voice was velvet over steel, accented but smooth, and it didn't belong to Marco. I turned slowly, my bag clutched against my chest like a shield. He stood in the doorway, backlit by the kitchen lights, and up close he was even more devastating. Tall, easily over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that tapered to a narrow waist. The kind of body that came from discipline, not a gym membership. His cologne reached me even from several feet away, something dark and expensive that made me think of leather and smoke. One of his men stood just behind him, hand resting casually near his jacket, where I was suddenly certain a weapon lived. "Sir," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry for the disturbance. I'm leaving." "Are you?" He tilted his head slightly, studying me with those unsettling eyes. "That seems wasteful." I blinked. I don't understand." "The manager." He said the word like it tasted bad. "He fired you for spilling water. An accident." "It was my fault." "Was it?" He took a step closer, and I fought the urge to back away. Something told me that running from this man would trigger instincts I didn't want to trigger. Or was it my fault, for being a distraction? My mouth went dry. I shouldn't have been... "What's your name?" The question cut through my stammering. I swallowed hard. Emma Price." "Emma." He repeated it slowly, like he was tasting each syllable. "You work here long?" 3 months. "And before that?" I didn't know why I answered. Maybe because his voice held a quality that made refusal seem impossible. "A hotel. Housekeeping. Before that, a diner that closed. Before that..." I trailed off. The list was long and depressing. "Sempre la stessa storia," he murmured, almost to himself. "Always the same story." Then, louder, "You told the manager you could work extra shifts to pay for the dress." "Yes, but how many extra shifts?" He moved closer still, invading my space with the casual confidence of someone who'd never been told no. "How many hours to pay for a $3,000 dress?" 3,000. My stomach dropped. I'd be in debt for months, maybe years. "I don't have much to offer, sir," I heard myself say, the words tumbling out in a rush of desperation. "But I can cook. Really cook, not just..." I went to culinary school, before my mom got sick, before everything. I was rambling. I knew I was rambling, but I couldn't stop. "I can work. Whatever you need. I'm good at being invisible, at staying out of the way. I don't ask questions or cause problems. I just need a chance." Invisible. Something flickered in his expression, too quick to read. "That's what you think you are." I didn't know how to answer that. He studied me for a long moment, and I became acutely aware of how I must look. Too thin, my hair escaping its bun in messy strands, my uniform marked with kitchen stains. Next to him I was a shadow, something easily overlooked and more easily forgotten. "Domenico." He spoke without turning his head, and the man behind him straightened. "Tell Marco that Emma is no longer his employee." Relief crashed through me, immediately followed by confusion. "Sir, she works for me now." The words hung in the air like smoke. Behind him, Domenico's expression remained carefully neutral, but I saw his hand shift slightly, a subtle movement that might have been surprise. "I don't understand," I said again, hating how small my voice sounded. "You said you can cook." He reached into his jacket. I flinched. I couldn't help it, and produced a business card, black with silver lettering, no name, just an address in the city's most exclusive neighborhood, and a phone number. "Tomorrow. 8 in the morning. Bring your knives if you have them." I took the card with numb fingers, the expensive cardstock smooth against my skin. "What kind of cooking?" "The kind that keeps you fed and paid." His lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "Unless you'd prefer to stay here, washing dishes and eating trash bread." Shame burned through me. He had seen. Of course he had seen. Men like him saw everything. "No, sir," I whispered. "Ben." "Good." He turned to leave, then paused, glancing back over his shoulder. Those amber eyes pinned me in place. "And Emma? Don't be late. I don't appreciate waiting." Then he was gone, his men flanking him as they moved through the kitchen with the fluid synchronization of people who'd walked together through much more dangerous places than a restaurant. The door swung shut behind them, and I was alone, staring at the card in my trembling hands. I should have been relieved, grateful even. A job. A real job, with someone who clearly had money and connections. It was more than I'd dared hope for an hour ago. So why did I feel like I'd just made a deal with the devil? The address on the card seemed to pulse in my vision, and I realized with a sick twist in my stomach that I recognized the neighborhood. Old money, real power, the kind of place where people like me only entered through service entrances. Emma? Marco's voice made me jump. He stood in the doorway, his earlier anger replaced by something that looked unsettlingly like fear. Who was that man? I don't know, I admitted. Madonna, he breathed, crossing himself. You don't know? Dio mio, that was... He cut himself off, shaking his head violently. Forget I said anything. Just be careful, ragazza. Very, very careful. He left before I could ask what he meant. But I heard him in the kitchen, the rapid-fire Italian he used when he was agitated, and beneath it, a name that made my blood run cold. Valentino. Not the dress designer, a family name. Old world, old money, old sins that never quite washed clean. I looked down at the card again, at the address that promised salvation or damnation, and wondered if there was really any difference between the two. My phone buzzed in my bag, a text from my landlord reminding me that rent was due in 3 days. 3 days. I had $17 in my bank account, and no job, except now I did have a job. With a man whose name made grown men cross themselves. A man whose eyes promised things I didn't have words for, whose presence had made me forget how to breathe, whose casual dominance had left me feeling stripped bare and exposed. I should run. Every instinct screamed it. Whatever this job was, whatever he wanted from me, it couldn't be worth the price I'd inevitably have to pay, but I thought of my empty apartment, my empty stomach, the empty future stretching before me like a prison sentence, and I thought of the way he'd looked at me. Not through me, like most people did, but at me, seeing something I'd thought I'd buried under layers of exhaustion and defeat. Invisible, he'd repeated, like the word offended him. I folded the card carefully and slipped it into my pocket, right against my heart, where I could feel its sharp edges pressing into my skin like a warning. Tomorrow, 8 a.m, I'd be there. God help me, I'd be there. I didn't sleep. How could I, when every time I closed my eyes I saw amber and gold staring back at me, felt the weight of that voice wrapping around my name like a claim. The mattress beneath me was thin enough that I could feel every spring, but it wasn't discomfort keeping me awake. It was the business card on my nightstand, gleaming faintly in the streetlight filtering through my single window. By 6 a.m, I gave up pretending. The shower was lukewarm at best, the water pressure barely enough to rinse the cheap shampoo from my hair, but I scrubbed myself until my skin turned pink, as if I could wash away the past and present myself as something new, something worthy of whatever this was. My closet offered few choices. 2 pairs of jeans, both worn thin at the knees, 3 shirts, all variations of black or gray, the cardigan with the hole in the elbow. I settled on the least damaged jeans and a black sweater that had seen better days, then stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror that was too clouded to show much detail. Dark circles shadowed my eyes. Nothing new there. My cheekbones stood out too sharply, and my collarbones created hollow valleys above the neckline of my sweater. I looked like what I was, a girl who'd been running on empty for too long, surviving rather than living. The knife roll lay at the bottom of my closet, buried under a box of my mother's things I couldn't bear to look at. I pulled it out with careful hands, the canvas worn soft from use. Inside, 6 knives gleamed despite the months of neglect, the only things from culinary school I'd managed to keep. Everything else had been sold, piece by piece, to pay for her medication that hadn't worked, for the hospital bills that kept coming long after she was gone. I ran my thumb along the blade of my chef's knife, testing the edge. Still sharp. Some things didn't dull, no matter how long you neglected them. The bus ride across town took 40 minutes, carrying me from the cramped streets of my neighborhood to wider avenues lined with trees that had probably been planted before I was born. The buildings grew taller, cleaner, more imposing. By the time I reached my stop, I was the only passenger left, and the driver gave me a curious look as I stepped off. The address led me to a street where even the sidewalks seemed expensive, made of old brick and herringbone patterns that probably cost more per square foot than my entire apartment. Wrought iron gates guarded entrances to townhouses that looked like something from a movie. 4 stories of pale stone and tall windows, with window boxes full of flowers that someone was paid to maintain. His address belonged to the largest house on the block, set back slightly from the street behind a black iron fence. No name on the buzzer, just a small camera that I was certain was watching me as I stood there, my knife roll clutched against my chest, trying to find the courage to press the button. A black car sat at the curb, not the kind you could buy at a dealership, but something custom, something that whispered rather than shouted wealth. The windows were tinted dark enough that I couldn't see inside, but I felt eyes on me nonetheless. 7:58. I was early. The thought of waiting on the sidewalk, of being visible and vulnerable, made my skin crawl. I reached for the buzzer. The gate clicked open before I could touch it. My heart hammered against my ribs as I walked up the stone path, past carefully manicured hedges and a fountain that burbled softly in the morning quiet. The front door was massive, made of dark wood with iron hardware that looked medieval. It, too, opened before I could knock. Domenico stood in the doorway, dressed more casually than last night, but no less intimidating in dark slacks and a fitted shirt. His eyes swept over me, assessing, cataloging, dismissing. "You're punctual," he said, his accent thicker than his employer's. "Come." The interior made my breath catch. Marble floors, a staircase that curved upward like something from a palace, artwork on the walls that I was certain belonged in museums, but it wasn't cold. There was warmth in the deep colors of the rugs, the soft leather of the furniture visible through an open doorway, the scent of coffee and something else. Something that smelled like home even though I'd never been here before. "Kitchen is downstairs," Domenico said, already moving. "He's waiting." Downstairs. Of course. Even in a house like this, the kitchen would be in the basement, where the help belonged. But when Domenico led me down a set of stone steps, what opened before me stole every thought from my head. This wasn't a kitchen. This was a cathedral to cooking. Stainless steel appliances that gleamed like mirrors. A gas range with 8 burners, the kind professional chefs dreamed about. Marble countertops that stretched for miles, dotted with copper pots hanging from a rack above. A walk-in refrigerator, its glass door revealing shelves packed with ingredients, knives displayed on a magnetic strip, each one worth more than everything I owned. And in the center of it all, leaning against the counter with a cup of espresso in his hand, was him. He'd traded the suit for dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with ink. I caught glimpses of script and symbols before I jerked my gaze away. His hair was slightly damp, as if he'd recently showered, and without the armor of the suit, he looked somehow more dangerous, more real. "Brava," he said softly, those amber eyes tracking my every movement. "You came. You told me to." The words slipped out before I could stop them, and I immediately regretted the implied challenge in my tone, but his lips curved, a real smile this time, brief but genuine. "I did. And you listened. Already we understand each other better than most." I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. "Your knives?" He gestured with his cup. I unrolled the canvas on the counter, my hands steadier than I felt. He set down his espresso and moved closer, examining each blade with the attention of someone who understood quality. "Misono," he murmured, touching the chef's knife with one finger. "Good steel. Well maintained." His eyes flicked to mine. "You said you went to culinary school." "Where?" "Culinary Institute, downtown campus." I swallowed. "I only finished 1 year before your mother got sick. It wasn't a question. He already knew. Of course he knew. Men like him didn't hire people without knowing everything about them first." "Yes." "And your father?" "Gone. Since I was 7. He nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something he'd suspected. "Brothers? Sisters?" "No one." The words came out smaller than I intended. "Just me." Something shifted in his expression, there and gone too quickly to interpret. He turned away, moving to the refrigerator with that predatory grace that made me think of big cats, all controlled power and latent threat. "Then you understand loyalty," he said, pulling out ingredients: eggs, cream, butter, herbs I couldn't identify from across the room. You understand what it means to take care of someone, to put their needs above your own. I understand survival, I corrected quietly. He glanced back at me, and for a moment, the air between us felt charged with something I couldn't name. See, that too. He set the ingredients on the counter between us, along with a bowl and a whisk. Make me breakfast, whatever you want, but make it good. Make it something that tells me who you are. My hands moved before my brain could catch up, reaching for the eggs with the muscle memory of 1,000 morning shifts. What do you like? Surprise me. I cracked eggs into the bowl, my movements careful and precise. The whisk felt right in my hand, familiar, like greeting an old friend. Cream, butter, a pinch of salt. My mind raced through possibilities, through flavor combinations and techniques that had once been second nature. In the refrigerator, I found fresh herbs, vegetables, cheese, ingredients I hadn't been able to afford in months. My fingers traced over tomatoes that actually smelled like tomatoes, basil so fragrant it made my eyes sting, cheese that was soft and creamy instead of the plastic-wrapped blocks I'd grown accustomed to. I built a dish in my mind, scrambled eggs, but not the way most people made them. Soft, creamy, barely set, with herbs folded in at the last moment. Roasted tomatoes on the side, their sweetness concentrated by heat. Toast made from bread that came from a bakery, not a plastic bag. He watched me work, silent and still, his presence a constant weight against my skin. I tried to ignore him, to lose myself in the rhythm of cooking the way I used to, but I felt every breath, every slight shift of his body. Every second his eyes remained locked on my hands. The eggs came together perfectly. Soft curds that gleamed in the morning light streaming through a window I hadn't noticed before. I plated them carefully, arranging everything with the precision my instructors had drilled into me, then set the plate before him. He didn't move immediately, just looked at the food, then at me, his expression unreadable. Sit, he said, gesturing to the stool across from him. I shouldn't. Sit, not a request. I sat, my spine straight, hands folded in my lap like a child at dinner. He picked up a fork, heavy silver, probably an antique, and took a bite. I stopped breathing. He closed his eyes, chewing slowly, and I watched his throat work as he swallowed. When he opened his eyes again, something had changed in them, something that made my pulse stumble. Dio, he breathed. When did you last cook like this? Really cook? Not since... I had to clear my throat. Not since before. Before your mother died. Yes. He took another bite, then another, and I watched him eat the food I'd made with a focus that felt almost intimate, almost invasive. When the plate was clean, he set down his fork with careful precision. You'll cook for me, he said. It wasn't a question, wasn't even really a command. It was simply a statement of fact, of a future already decided. Every day. Breakfast, dinner, whatever I want, whenever I want it. That's the job? Relief flooded through me, just cooking. I could do that. That's all? His smile was slow, dangerous. For now. The relief evaporated. What does that mean? It means you'll live here. He continued as if I hadn't spoken, as if my opinion on the matter was irrelevant. The 4th floor has been prepared. Your own room, your own bathroom. You'll have access to the kitchen at any time, and a budget for groceries. Domenico will take you to collect your things this afternoon. Wait. I stood abruptly, the stool scraping against the floor. I can't just move in here. I have an apartment. I have $17 in your bank account and rent due in 3 days. His voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. You have nothing, Emma. Nothing but the clothes on your back and the knives your mother probably sacrificed to buy you. The accuracy of his words hit like a slap. How do you... I know everything about you. He stood as well, and suddenly the kitchen felt much smaller. I know your landlord is a criminal who charges triple the legal rent because you have no other options. I know you've been eating table scraps and bread from dumpsters. I know you sold your textbooks, your mother's jewelry, everything that might have had value, just to keep a roof over your head for 1 more week. Shame burned through me, hot and acidic. You had no right. I had every right. He moved around the counter, closing the distance between us with deliberate steps. You're mine now. Mine to protect, mine to provide for, mine to... He stopped himself, jaw tightening. You work for me. You live under my roof. You accept my money. That makes you my responsibility. I'm not a child, I said, hating the tremor in my voice. No. His eyes traveled down my body and back up, slow enough to make my skin heat. You're definitely not a child. The air felt too thick to breathe. I could smell his cologne again, closer now, mixing with the scent of the food I'd cooked and something else. Something that might have been danger, or might have been desire. I couldn't tell the difference anymore. Why? The word came out as barely a whisper. Why are you doing this? He reached out, slowly enough that I could have stepped back, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers brushed my cheek, and I shivered despite myself. Because you reminded me, he said quietly, that invisible things are sometimes the most valuable, and because... His thumb traced my cheekbone, his touch gentle despite the calluses I could feel. Because I don't like seeing beautiful things broken. Before I could process that, before I could ask what he meant, his phone buzzed. He stepped back immediately, the moment shattering like glass, and pulled the device from his pocket. His expression changed as he read the screen. Went cold, went hard, became the face of the man who'd walked into the restaurant last night with death in his wake. Domenico, he called, and the other man appeared so quickly he must have been waiting just outside. A rapid exchange in Italian followed, too fast for me to catch more than a few words. Business, problem, names I didn't recognize. When he turned back to me, the man who'd touched my face was gone, replaced by something carved from ice and iron. Go upstairs with Domenico. He'll show you your room. Stay there until I return. His voice left no room for argument. Don't leave the house. Don't call anyone. Don't open the door for anyone except the men I've assigned to watch you. Watch me? Fear spiked through my confusion. Why would I need... Because you're mine now, he repeated, and this time it sounded like a threat and a promise wrapped together. And what's mine, I protect. He was already moving toward the stairs, already pulling on a jacket that Domenico had somehow produced, already becoming someone else entirely. At the top of the steps, he paused and looked back. Cook whatever you want for dinner, Emma. I'll be hungry when I return. Then he was gone, and I was left standing in a kitchen worth more than I'd earn in a lifetime. In a house I didn't understand, belonging to a man whose name I still didn't know. Domenico cleared his throat. Come, I'll show you the room. I followed him up 3 flights of stairs, my legs shaking, my mind spinning. The 4th floor was smaller than the others, more intimate, with slanted ceilings and dormer windows that looked out over the city. He opened a door at the end of the hall. The room beyond was bigger than my entire apartment. A bed with white linens, a dresser, a closet, a window seat with cushions. Through another door, I glimpsed a bathroom with a clawfoot tub. Dinner is at 8 unless he tells you otherwise, Domenico said. The pantry is stocked, the accounts are open. If you need anything, there's a phone on the desk. Extension 3. Wait, I turned to him. What's his name? Your boss. What do I call him? Domenico's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. You call him Sir, or don't call him anything at all. But if you're smart, ragazza, you'll learn his name without asking. Some names are dangerous to speak aloud. He left me alone in the beautiful room, in the beautiful house, with more questions than answers and a fear growing in my chest that felt suspiciously like anticipation. I walked to the window and looked down at the street below, at the black car pulling away from the curb with tinted windows that hid everything inside. What had I agreed to? What had I become? And why, despite every rational thought screaming at me to run, did some broken part of me want to stay? The hours crawled by like wounded animals. I explored the house with careful steps, half expecting someone to tell me I didn't belong, that I'd misunderstood, that girls like me weren't allowed to touch the silk curtains or walk across the Persian rugs. But no one stopped me. In fact, I saw no one at all except for the shadow of a man stationed near the front door. One of the guards, I assumed, though he never acknowledged my presence. The second floor held a library that smelled like leather and old paper, shelves stretching to the ceiling filled with books in multiple languages. I traced my fingers along spines embossed with gold, Italian titles I couldn't read, mixed with English classics I recognized from school. A chess set sat on a side table, pieces carved from onyx and marble, frozen mid-game as if the players had simply vanished. The third floor seemed to be his. I didn't enter, but I saw through an open doorway, a massive bed with dark sheets, more books, a desk covered in papers I knew better than to examine. The faint scent of his cologne drifted from the room, and I backed away quickly, feeling like I'd trespassed on something sacred. By late afternoon, Domenico returned and drove me to my apartment in silence. The contrast between the two neighborhoods was jarring, from manicured streets to cracked sidewalks, from flowering trees to chain-link fences tagged with graffiti. He waited in the car while I climbed the narrow stairs, key trembling in my hand. My landlord, Mr. Kowalski, intercepted me in the hallway. "You got my text about the rent? 3 days, Emma. I'm not running a charity." "I'm moving out," I heard myself say. The words felt surreal, borrowed from someone else's life. "I'll leave the key tomorrow." His eyes narrowed. "You owe me for the full month. The lease says I can leave with a week's notice." "The lease says a lot of things." He stepped closer, and I smelled whiskey on his breath. "Maybe we can work something out, you and me. Private arrangement." Disgust coiled in my stomach. But before I could respond, Domenico was there, materializing at the top of the stairs like a phantom. He didn't say anything, didn't even look at Mr. Kowalski. He simply stood behind me, perfectly still, one hand resting casually at his hip, where his jacket hung open just enough to reveal the shoulder holster underneath. Mr. Kowalski went pale. "Never mind. We're good. Keep the deposit." He disappeared into his apartment so fast he nearly tripped over his own feet. "Thank you," I whispered to Domenico. He grunted, which I was learning was his version of, "You're welcome." My apartment looked even more depressing through the lens of where I'd just come from. Water-stained ceiling, a hot plate instead of a stove, the smell of mildew that never quite left no matter how much I cleaned. I packed quickly. There wasn't much to take. Clothes, my mother's photo album, the few books I'd kept, toiletries, everything fit into 2 garbage bags and a backpack. "This is all?" Domenico asked, eyeing the bags with something that might have been pity. "This is all." The drive back felt longer, each block carrying me further from the life I knew into something unknowable. When we pulled up to the townhouse, the sun was setting, painting the stone facade in shades of amber and gold that reminded me too much of his eyes. "He'll be home at 8, Domenico said, helping me carry the bags inside. "You should start cooking." "Right. Dinner." The job I'd actually been hired for, before everything got twisted into something else. I returned to the cathedral kitchen and stood in its center, trying to remember what it felt like to create. To cook for the pure joy of it rather than out of desperate necessity. The refrigerator revealed treasures. Fresh fish on ice. Vegetables so perfect they looked painted. Herbs bundled with twine, cheese wheels and cured meats, and bottles of wine probably older than me. I decided on simplicity: pan-seared salmon with a lemon butter sauce, roasted asparagus, risotto made the traditional way, slowly, carefully, with constant attention. Food that required presence, that demanded I stop thinking about everything else and focus only on the task at hand. The kitchen became a meditation. The sizzle of fish hitting hot oil, the rhythmic stirring of rice, the sharp scent of lemon cutting through butter and garlic. My hands remembered what my mind had tried to forget, that cooking was the only magic I'd ever been good at. The only way I knew to communicate things I didn't have words for. At 7:55, I plated the food with trembling hands. At 7:58, I heard the front door open, followed by voices, his, deeper than the others, edged with something that sounded like anger barely leashed. At 8, exactly, he walked into the kitchen. Blood speckled his collar. I froze. The plate halfway to the table, my heart suddenly hammering so loud I was certain he could hear it. His eyes found mine immediately, and I watched him force the tension from his shoulders, watched the violence fade from his expression like storm clouds clearing. "Emma." My name in his mouth sounded like both a greeting and a claim. "You're hurt," I whispered, unable to look away from the red spots on white fabric. "Not mine." He shrugged off his jacket, revealing more blood on his shirt sleeve. "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." As if blood was as mundane as rain, something that happened and was dismissed without thought. He noticed my expression, and his jaw tightened. "This bothers you." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Yes." "Would you prefer I lie? Come home in clean clothes and pretend I spent the day in boardrooms?" He moved to the sink, rolling up his sleeves further to wash his hands with methodical care. "I won't insult you with that. I don't know what I prefer," I admitted. "I don't understand what any of this is." He dried his hands on a towel, then turned to face me fully. In the warm light of the kitchen, with his sleeves rolled and his hair slightly disheveled, he looked almost human, almost safe. "My name is Luca," he said quietly. "Luca Valentino, and I think you know exactly what I am, even if you're afraid to say it out loud. Valentino." The name Marco had whispered like a curse. The name that made men cross themselves. Old money, old sins, old blood spilled in the name of power and respect, and things I couldn't begin to understand. "You're Mafia," I breathed. "See." No hesitation, no shame. "I am the head of the Valentino family. I control everything that happens in this city that matters, and many things that happen elsewhere. Men fear me. Women want me. Everyone wants something from me." His eyes held mine. "Except you. You only wanted a chance to cook." "That's not true." The words escaped before I could stop them. "I wanted to survive. Same thing, for you." He moved closer, drawn to the food I'd plated. "You cook to survive. You survive to cook. It's all you have left of who you were before the world tried to break you." The accuracy of his observation stole my breath. He sat at the small table I'd set, gesturing for me to join him. When I hesitated, his expression hardened. "Sit, Emma. I don't eat alone." I sat, watching as he took his first bite, his eyes closed, a sound escaping his throat that was almost painful in its appreciation. When he opened them again, the amber had gone molten. "Perfetto," he murmured. "You put yourself on this plate. I can taste it. The loneliness, the hunger, the small desperate hope that maybe this time, someone will see you." Tears burned behind my eyes. I blinked them back furiously. "You're wrong." "Am I?" He continued eating, but his attention never left me. "Tell me about your mother." "Why?" "Because I want to know. Because you're living in my house, cooking my food, and I protect what's mine. I need to understand what made you." "She was sick for 2 years. The words came out flat, rehearsed from telling doctors and social workers and bill collectors. "Cancer. We tried everything. Chemo, radiation, experimental treatments we couldn't afford. Nothing worked." "And your father? Where was he while you were watching her die?" "I don't know. He left when I was 7. One day he was there. The next he wasn't. Mom said he couldn't handle being poor, being nobody. He wanted more than she could give him." Luca set down his fork carefully. "He was a fool." "Maybe. Or maybe he was smart. Maybe he knew that staying would have destroyed him too." "You think that's what happened to you? You were destroyed?" I met his eyes. "Weren't I?" He studied me for a long moment, and I felt exposed, flayed open under that amber gaze. "No. You were forged. There's a difference. I don't feel forged. I feel broken. Broken things can be reforged, made stronger." He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. "That's what I do, Emma. I take broken things and make them powerful." I pulled my hand back. "I don't want to be powerful. I just want to be safe. Safety is an illusion. Power is real." But his voice had softened, and when he continued eating, some of the tension had left his shoulders. "This risotto. How did you make it so, what's the word, comforting?" "Arborio rice, chicken stock, butter, parmesan. Constant stirring. Patience. Patience." He smiled slightly. "Not something I'm known for." "What are you known for?" The question was bold, dangerous. But I needed to know what I'd gotten myself into. His smile faded. "Many things. most of them not suitable for dinner conversation with someone like you, someone like me. Innocent. Untouched by this world. His eyes dragged over me again, that same assessing look that made me feel naked. I intend to keep you that way. You can't control everything, I said quietly. Watch me. The words hung between us, a promise and a threat. He finished his meal in silence, and I sat frozen, watching him, trying to understand the contradiction he presented. The blood on his collar, and the appreciation for risotto. The violence he carried like a second skin, and the gentleness with which he'd touched my face that morning. When his plate was empty, he stood, buttoning his cuffs with precise movements. I have business tonight. Stay inside. Don't answer the door. Don't go near the windows after dark. Am I a prisoner? The question burst out before I could stop it. He paused, turning back to me with an expression I couldn't read. No, Kara. You're something far more dangerous than that. What's that supposed to mean? It means you're mine. He said it simply, as if it explained everything. And what's mine? Everyone else wants to take. Before I could respond, he was gone again, leaving me alone with dirty dishes and 1,000 unanswered questions burning in my chest. I cleaned the kitchen with shaking hands, putting everything back in its perfect place, trying to impose order on the chaos swirling inside me. Through the window above the sink, I could see the street below, see the black car pulling away with Luca inside, see the shadows of men stationed at intervals around the property, protecting me, or keeping me caged. Maybe both. Upstairs in my beautiful room, I unpacked my garbage bags of belongings, hanging my pathetic clothes in a closet designed for a wardrobe 10 times the size. My mother's photo album went on the nightstand, the only splash of color in all the white and cream, her smile frozen in time before the sickness came, before everything turned gray. I ran a bath in the clawfoot tub, sinking into water hot enough to burn, and let myself cry for the first time since she died. Cried for the girl I'd been, who'd had dreams and plans, and a future that looked nothing like this. Cried for the woman I was becoming, trapped in a golden cage with a beautiful monster who saw too much and promised things I didn't understand. When the water went cold, I dried off and crawled into bed, wrapping myself in sheets that smelled like lavender and luxury. Through the window, the city glittered like scattered diamonds, each light representing a life I'd never touch, a world I'd never inhabit, except now I did inhabit it. Now I lived in a mansion with a man whose name made people cross themselves, who came home with blood on his collar and honey in his voice, who looked at me like I was something precious and breakable and his. Sleep came eventually, fitful and full of amber eyes and whispered warnings. When I woke to hands on my shoulders, shaking me roughly, I thought I was still dreaming. Emma, wake up. Luca's voice, urgent and hard. I opened my eyes to find him leaning over me, still in his blood-speckled shirt, his face carved in shadows and moonlight. Get dressed, he said. Now, we need to leave. What? Why? Someone knows you're here. His hands tightened on my shoulders. Someone's coming for you, and I won't let them have you. Terror locked my limbs in place. Move, Emma. Luca's voice cut through the fog of sleep and fear. He was already pulling clothes from my dresser, jeans, a sweater, shoes. Get dressed. 30 seconds. My hands fumbled with the clothes, my fingers clumsy and shaking. He turned away, giving me privacy I hadn't asked for, speaking rapidly into his phone in Italian too fast for me to follow. Through the window, I saw more cars pulling up to the street, dark shapes moving with military precision. Who's coming? I managed to ask, yanking the sweater over my head. Why would anyone want me? He turned back, and in the dim light his eyes were almost black. Because I want you. That's reason enough. Before I could process that, he had my arm, pulling me toward the door with a grip that was firm, but somehow still careful, as if even in crisis he was aware of his strength versus my fragility. We descended the stairs quickly, his body positioned between me and the windows, shielding me from sightlines I didn't understand. Domenico waited at the bottom, along with 3 other men I didn't recognize, all armed with weapons they didn't bother to hide. The casual violence of it, the guns, the tight expressions, the way they moved like soldiers, made everything terrifyingly real. The safe house? Domenico asked in English, probably for my benefit. No. They'll expect that. Luca's jaw was tight. Plan C. Boss. That's not secure. It's secure enough. His hand found the small of my back, burning through the sweater. And it's the last place they'll look. We moved through the kitchen and out a back door I hadn't known existed, into a narrow garden that led to an alley where another black car waited, engine already running. Luca pushed me into the back seat and slid in beside me, his body crowding mine into the corner. Drive, he told the man behind the wheel, and lose anyone who tries to follow. The car lurched forward, and I gripped the leather seat as we careened through narrow streets, the driver taking turns at speeds that should have been impossible. Luca pulled out his phone, typing with one hand while the other remained pressed against my thigh. Anchoring me, claiming me, I couldn't tell which. I don't understand, I whispered. I'm nobody. Why would anyone? You stopped being nobody the moment I decided you were mine. He didn't look up from his phone. My enemies see you as leverage, a weakness they can exploit. Then let me go. Tell them I mean nothing to you. I'll disappear. No. The word was absolute. He finally looked at me, and the intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. You're not going anywhere, Emma. Not now. Not ever. You can't just decide that. I'm not a possession, aren't you? His hand slid higher on my thigh. Not sexual, but possessive. A brand. You live in my house. You eat my food. You cook with ingredients I provide. You sleep in a bed I gave you. Every breath you take is because I allow it. The words should have terrified me. They did terrify me. But underneath the fear was something else. Something that felt disturbingly like relief. Like maybe, after years of fighting alone, someone had finally decided I was worth protecting. Who is it? I asked instead. Who's after me? His expression darkened. A rival family. The Carbones. They've been testing boundaries, pushing to see how far they can go before I push back. His thumb traced circles on my leg. An absent gesture that felt intimate, despite the violence humming beneath his skin. Taking you would be a declaration of war. So this is about territory, power. Not about me at all. Everything is about you. The words came out rough, unfiltered. Everything has been about you since you looked at me in that restaurant kitchen and offered me the only thing you had left to give. I remembered that moment, standing there with my pathetic knife roll, desperate and hollow, offering to cook because I had nothing else. Had that really only been yesterday? It felt like a lifetime ago. The car slowed, turning into what looked like an abandoned warehouse district. Graffiti covered the walls, broken windows gaped like missing teeth, and the few streetlights that still worked cast sickly orange pools on cracked pavement. Where are we? I asked. Somewhere no one will think to look. Luca helped me out of the car, his hand never leaving me. My first restaurant. Before the family, before everything else. I cooked here once, like you. I stared at the dilapidated building, trying to imagine him young and hungry, chopping vegetables instead of making decisions that left blood on his collar. You were a chef. I was a lot of things before I became this. He led me toward a side entrance, punching a code into a keypad that looked incongruously modern against the decay. My father had other plans for me. But for one summer, I pretended I could be something else. The door opened to reveal a space that was nothing like the exterior suggested. Inside, someone had maintained what must have once been a small trattoria, a dozen tables, a bar, and through an archway, a kitchen that was dated but clean, as if waiting for someone to return and bring it back to life. I kept it, Luca said quietly, watching my face. Even after everything, even after I accepted what I was meant to be, I couldn't let it go. I walked through the dining room, my fingers trailing over chairbacks, trying to picture him here. Younger, unblooded, still believing he could choose a different path. Why are you showing me this? Because I want you to understand. He moved behind me, close enough that I could feel his heat. I know what it's like to have something you love taken from you, to be forced into a shape that doesn't fit, to survive when you wanted to create. I turned to face him, and in the dim light filtering through dusty windows, he looked almost vulnerable, almost human. Then why not let me go? Give me enough money to disappear, to start over somewhere safe? Because I'm selfish. His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone the way he had that first morning. Because the moment I saw you, something in me recognized something in you. The same brokenness, the same hunger, the same desperate need to be seen. Luca. And because, he continued, his voice dropping to something raw and honest, I haven't wanted to protect something this badly since my sister died. Since I failed her. The confession hung between us, heavy with meaning I was only beginning to understand. What happened to her? His hand dropped. He turned away, walking to the bar and pouring 2 glasses of something amber from a bottle that had been waiting there. She was 17, beautiful, innocent, everything good I wasn't. A rival family took her to get to my father. By the time we found her, he swallowed the alcohol in one burning gulp. She was already gone. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't be sorry. Be safe. He set down the glass with controlled force. Be alive. That's all I ask. Stay where I put you, do what I tell you, and let me keep you breathing. At what cost? I had to ask. What do you want from me, really? It can't just be cooking. No one goes to these lengths for an employee. He crossed back to me in 3 long strides, and suddenly his hands were in my hair, tilting my face up to his. You want to know what I want? I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, caught in the amber of his eyes. I want to see you smile, really smile. Not the polite thing you give when you think it's expected. I want to watch you cook without that haunted look, without counting every ingredient like it might be your last. I want to give you everything you've been denied. Safety, comfort, choice, and watch you blossom into who you were meant to be before the world tried to grind you down. His forehead pressed against mine, his breath mingling with my own. And yes, he continued, his voice turning dark, possessive. I want to keep you, lock you away where nothing can touch you, where only I can see you, where you belong to me and me alone. I want to be the only danger in your life, the only darkness you know, because at least with me, you know the monster you're dealing with. That's insane, I breathed, but I didn't pull away. See, completely, his lips brushed my forehead, feather-light. But I've never pretended to be sane, Kara, only honest. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I'd forgotten I even had it. Luca released me immediately, his expression hardening back into the mask of control. Who has your number? No one. Just my old landlord, a few bill collectors. He held out his hand, and I gave him the phone without thinking. His face went cold as he read the screen, then showed it to me. Unknown number. Tell your boss the girl isn't worth a war. Give her to us, and we forget this happened. Ice flooded my veins. How did they? They've been watching longer than I thought. Luca's jaw was granite. He typed a response quickly, his fingers moving with lethal precision, then showed me what he'd written. Come take her if you can. I'll enjoy watching you try. Don't. I grabbed his wrist. Don't antagonize them. If giving me up stops violence, then nothing. He pulled away, hitting send before I could stop him. You're not a bargaining chip. You're not a sacrifice. You're mine, and I don't negotiate with men who threaten what belongs to me. People are going to die because of me, I said, horror building in my chest, because you decided I was worth more than peace. People die every day in this life. His voice was cold now, the tenderness from moments ago completely erased. The only question is whether they die for something that matters. You matter, Emma. More than peace, more than territory, more than any alliance I could forge with the Carbonis. Why? I was shouting now, months of fear and frustration finally breaking free. Why do I matter? I'm nobody. I have nothing. I can't give you anything. You cook, he said simply. You create beauty from nothing. You looked at me like I was human instead of a monster. And when I told you my name, you didn't run. His hands framed my face again, gentle despite the violence thrumming through him. That's everything, Kara. That's more than anyone's given me in years. Tears spilled down my cheeks, hot and shameful. I don't know how to be what you need. You already are. He kissed my forehead again, lingering this time. All you have to do is exist. Let me keep you safe. Let me give you everything you deserve. And maybe eventually, Let me be more than the monster who took you. You didn't take me. I came willingly. Did you? Or did I simply present you with a choice between starvation and survival, knowing which one you'd pick? His smile was bitter. I'm good at that, manipulating situations until people think they're choosing freely, when really, I've controlled every option from the start. Then give me a real choice now. I met his eyes. Tell me I can leave. Tell me you'll protect me from a distance, set me up somewhere safe. Let me go. His hands tightened fractionally on my face. No. Why not? Because I'm selfish. Because I'm broken. Because I need you more than I've needed anything in my entire miserable life, and I'm not strong enough to let you go. The honesty in his voice cracked something open in my chest. I reached up, covering his hands with mine, feeling the calluses and scars that marked him as a man who'd fought his way through darkness. Then I need you to promise me something, I whispered. Anything. Promise me that no matter what happens, you'll never lie to me. I can survive danger, Luca. I can survive violence and fear and uncertainty, but I can't survive being lied to. Not again. Not after everyone else. His eyes searched mine, and I saw the war raging behind them. Between the man who wanted to protect me from everything, including the truth, and the man who'd just confessed his need for me was stronger than his control. I promise, he finally said. No lies, no matter how ugly the truth gets, okay? I took a shaky breath. Then tell me, what happens now? He released me, pulling out his phone as it buzzed with incoming messages. His expression grew darker with each one he read. Now, he said quietly, we wait. The Carbonis made their move. They're hitting 2 of my businesses tonight, trying to draw me out, make me spread my resources thin. He looked up, and his eyes were ice and amber. They think I'll leave you vulnerable to protect my territory. And will you? His smile was terrifying. No, I'll let them burn everything I've built. I'll let them think they're winning. And then, when they're confident and exposed, I'll destroy them so completely that their name becomes a warning instead of a legacy. All for me? I couldn't quite believe it. All for you. He pulled me against his chest, and I felt his heart pounding beneath his ribs. You're the only thing that matters now, Emma. Everything else is just noise. I stood in the circle of his arms, in an abandoned restaurant that smelled like dust and lost dreams, and felt something inside me shift. Not love. It was too soon for that, too complicated. But something else. Recognition, maybe. Understanding that we were both broken things trying to find shape in the wreckage. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. His phone continued buzzing. The war had begun, and I was the reason why. 3 days. That's how long we stayed in the abandoned restaurant while Luca's world burned around us. He'd converted the small office upstairs into a command center, phones and laptops spread across a desk that had once held reservation books and supplier invoices. I heard him on calls at all hours. Italian rapid-fire and deadly calm, English clipped and precise, occasionally other languages I couldn't identify. He was orchestrating a war from a building that smelled like oregano and memories, and he did it without ever leaving my side for more than minutes at a time. Domenico came and went, bringing supplies, food, clothes, weapons I tried not to look at too closely. Other men arrived for meetings, their voices carrying up the stairs in tones that ranged from angry to afraid. Through it all, Luca remained centered, controlled. A dark sun, around which everything else orbited, and I cooked. It was the only thing I knew how to do, the only way I could contribute while men fought and bled over the question of whether I was worth keeping. The kitchen became my sanctuary, and I filled it with food no one would eat at a time like this. Fresh pasta rolled by hand, sauces that simmered for hours, bread that required patience and prayer. Luca ate everything I made, would appear in the kitchen doorway at odd hours, drawn by scent and something else, and watch me work with those amber eyes that saw too much. You don't have to do this, he said on the second night, finding me kneading dough at 2 a.m. because sleep was impossible. You're not a prisoner here, Emma. You can rest. I can't rest. My hands worked the dough with more force than necessary. People are dying because of me. The least I can do is... I broke off, not knowing how to finish. Feed me? His lips curved slightly. Take care of me while I take care of everything else? Something like that. He moved behind me, his hands covering mine, stilling their frantic movement. You have flour on your face. I usually do. His thumb brushed my cheekbone, wiping away the white powder, and the gesture was so gentle it made my throat tight. 3 of the Carbone's businesses are gone. Their drug operation, their gambling house, their smuggling route through the port. I've cut off their money, their reputation, their ability to threaten anyone ever again. How many people died? I had to ask. Does it matter? Yes. He turned me to face him, his hands cupping my jaw, forcing me to meet his eyes. 7 of theirs, 2 of mine. Good men who knew what they were fighting for and chose to do it anyway. Guilt crashed through me. I'm not worth 9 lives, Luca. You're worth 1,000, his forehead pressed against mine. And those men died protecting what's ours, not just you. They died defending the idea that we don't negotiate with people who make threats, that we don't surrender what belongs to us just because someone demands it. I don't belong to you, I whispered. But the protest was weak, and we both knew it. Don't you? His breath was warm against my lips. Your clothes are ones I bought. Your food comes from money I provide. You sleep under my protection and wake up thinking about what I might want for breakfast. If that's not belonging, Kara, then what is? Choice, I said. Belonging requires choice. Then choose. He pulled back just enough to look at me properly. Right now. Do you want to leave? I'll give you money, documents, a new identity if needed. I'll set you up somewhere safe where the Carbones can't find you, where you can start over. Just say the word. My hands had gone still on the dough. And if I stay? If you stay, you're mine completely. No half measures. No pretending this is just a job. You live in my house, sleep in my bed when I ask you to, stand by my side when I need you there. You become part of this world, with all the darkness and danger that entails. Sleep in your bed, I repeated, my heart hammering. I mean whatever you're willing to give me. His thumb traced my lower lip. I won't force you, Emma. I've done terrible things, but I'm not that kind of monster. But I won't pretend I don't want you either. That I haven't thought about tasting you, touching you, making you mine in every possible way. Heat flooded through me, confusing and terrifying. I don't know how to be what you want. You already are. He kissed my forehead, then my temple, then the corner of my mouth, gentle touches that felt like promises. You're real. You're honest. You see me and don't flinch. I do flinch, I admitted. Every time you come home with blood on your clothes, every time I hear about someone dying, I flinch. Good. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me against his chest. Fear means you're still human, still soft. I don't want this life to make you hard like me. I pressed my face into his shirt, breathing in his scent, cologne and smoke and something underneath that was just him. What happens when this is over? When the Carbones are gone? Then we go home. His hand stroked through my hair. And you cook for me every day, and I keep you safe. And maybe, if I haven't completely destroyed your capacity for feeling, you learn to want me the way I want you. I already want you, I confessed into his chest. I just don't know if that's real or just trauma, Stockholm Syndrome, dependence. Does it matter? He tilted my chin up. If the want is real, who cares how it started? I care. I need to know that I'm choosing this, not just surviving it. His expression softened, and he kissed me then. Really kissed me. His lips claiming mine with a hunger that had been building for days. I gasped against his mouth, and he took advantage, deepening the kiss until I was clinging to him, dizzy and desperate, and finally feeling something other than fear. When he pulled back, we were both breathing hard. That feel like survival to you? He asked roughly. No, I admitted. That felt like want. Then want me, Emma. Choose me. Stay with me, and let me spend the rest of my life proving I'm worth it. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He checked it, and his expression went cold and satisfied. It's done, he said. Marco Carbone just agreed to terms. They're leaving the city, the ones who survive anyway. It's over? This part is. He pulled me close again. But there's always another threat, another rival, another reason for violence. That's the life, Kara. It never really ends. Then why do you stay in it? I had to ask. If you hate it, if you wanted something else once, why not walk away? His smile was bitter. Because I'm good at it. Because my family needs me. Because the alternative is letting weaker men take power. Men who have no honor, no code, no lines they won't cross. At least with me in charge, there are rules. There's protection for the innocent. There's mercy when it can be afforded. And when it can't be afforded, then there's me. He kissed the top of my head, and I'm very, very good at being merciless. The truth of it should have terrified me. Maybe once it would have. But after 3 days in this strange limbo, after watching him orchestrate destruction while eating my pasta, after feeling his gentleness despite the violence he commanded, I understood something fundamental. Luca Valentino was a monster by necessity, but with me, he tried to be a man. And that was enough. It had to be enough. Take me home, I said quietly. Please. I want to go home. His eyes searched mine. You mean the house? I mean wherever you are. The admission felt like surrender and victory all at once. That's home now. You made it home. Something raw and vulnerable flashed across his face, there and gone so quickly I almost missed it. Then he was lifting me, carrying me toward the stairs with that easy strength that still surprised me. Luca, the dough, we'll keep. He kissed me again, slower this time, thorough. Right now, I need to take you home and show you exactly what you agreeing to be mine means. Heat pooled low in my belly. I'm afraid. I know. I'll be gentle. I'm not afraid of that. I cupped his face, feeling the stubble rough against my palms. I'm afraid of how much I want this, how much I want you. Then be afraid together with me, he murmured against my lips, because I'm terrified of how much power you have over me. How completely you've undone everything I thought I was. We left the restaurant in the gray hours before dawn, Domenico driving while Luca kept me tucked against his side in the back seat. The city was quiet, exhausted from violence, and when we pulled up to the townhouse, it looked exactly as I remembered, beautiful and imposing and somehow welcoming all at once. Welcome home, Emma, Luca said as we crossed the threshold. Home. The word settled into my chest like a bird finding its nest. The next weeks blurred together in a strange new rhythm. I cooked, creating elaborate meals that Luca ate with the focus of a man starving for more than food. He worked, disappearing into his office for hours at a time, but always emerging for dinner, always finding me in the kitchen or the library or the garden that bloomed behind the house. And slowly, carefully, we learned each other. I learned that he took his coffee black and scalding hot, that he read poetry in Italian before bed, that thunderstorms made him tense because they reminded him of the night his sister died, that he was unfailingly gentle with me even when he'd spent the day being ruthless with everyone else, that he kept fresh flowers in the kitchen because he'd noticed I smiled when I saw them. He learned that I sang quietly when I thought no one was listening, that I hoarded books like treasure, that I still had nightmares about my mother's last days, that I needed reassurance sometimes, needed him to tell me I wasn't a burden, wasn't just convenient, that I was learning to trust him, slowly, one day at a time. 3 months after that night in the restaurant, he found me in the kitchen making fresh pasta, a task that had become meditation, therapy, and prayer all at once. Marry me, he said. I nearly dropped the pasta roller. What? Marry me. He moved closer, and there was no hesitation in his voice, no question. Just certainty. Make it official. Make it permanent. Be mine in every way that matters. Luca, we've only known each other. I knew the moment I saw you. His hands framed my face, flour dust and all. I knew you were meant to be mine. Everything since then has just been waiting for you to catch up. That's insane. So you keep telling me. He smiled, and it transformed his face into something almost boyish. But you're still here. Still cooking my food. Sleeping in my house. Wearing my ring. I glanced down at my hand, at the thin gold band he'd given me a month ago. You said this was for protection, so other families would know I was under your claim. It was. It is. But it's also a promise. His thumb traced the ring, that I'll keep you safe, that I'll give you everything, that I'll love you until my last breath and probably beyond. Love? My voice cracked. You never said... I'm saying it now. His eyes held mine, amber and gold and completely sincere. Ti amo, Emma. I love you. Your strength, your softness, your stubborn insistence on seeing good in me when there's precious little to find. I love the way you hum while you cook and the way you curl into me at night like you're afraid I'll disappear. I love that you chose me, even knowing what I am. Tears spilled down my cheeks. I love you too, I whispered. God help me. I love you too. His kiss was different this time, not claiming or possessive, but reverent. Like I was something precious he'd been given and couldn't quite believe he deserved. So that's yes? He murmured against my lips. You'll marry me? Let me put a real ring on your finger and stand up in front of everyone and claim you as mine? Yes. The word felt like freedom instead of surrender. Yes, I'll marry you. He lifted me onto the counter, kissing me until I was breathless and dizzy and completely his. When he finally pulled back, his smile was brighter than I'd ever seen it. Good, he said, because I already bought the ring and told my family, and possibly started planning the wedding. I laughed, actually laughed, the sound rusty but real. You were that sure? No. His expression turned serious. I was that desperate, that hopeful, that in love. I pulled him back to me, tasting flour and coffee and something that might have been happiness on his lips. Outside, the city hummed with life, dangerous and beautiful and full of darkness. But inside, in this kitchen that had become my sanctuary, with this man who'd become my home, I finally understood what it meant to be found. I'd offered him the only thing I had, the ability to cook, to create, to nourish, and he'd given me everything in return. 6 months later, we married in the garden behind the house, surrounded by roses and men with guns hidden under expensive suits. I wore white silk that Luca had commissioned, and he wore black. And when he slipped the platinum band onto my finger, his hands shook just slightly. Mine, he whispered as we kissed. Ours, I corrected, and felt him smile against my lips. That night I cooked for 50 people. 5 courses that told our story in food. Bitter greens for the hunger we'd both known. Rich pasta for comfort found. Delicate fish for new beginnings. Succulent meat for passion discovered. And finally, a dessert so sweet it made people sigh. For love that somehow bloomed in darkness. Luca ate every bite, watching me across the table with eyes that promised forever. And later, when the guests had gone and we were alone in the house that was truly ours now, he carried me upstairs to our bedroom. No longer separate floors, separate lives, but joined, merged, complete. I don't have much to offer, sir, I teased, echoing those desperate words from what felt like a lifetime ago. But I can cook. You have everything to offer, he corrected, laying me down on sheets that smelled like us. And you're not a maid anymore, Kara. You're my wife, my partner, my everything. What does that make you? He smiled down at me, and in that smile I saw the boy he'd been, the man he'd become, and the future we'd build together. Yours, he said simply. Just yours. And as he kissed me, as we came together in the darkness with only moonlight and love to guide us, I thought about the strange journey that had led me here, from invisible to cherished, from starving to satisfied, from alone to belonging. I'd walked into his world offering nothing but the ability to create beauty from simple ingredients. And he'd taken that offering and built us a life. Some love stories began with flowers and poetry. Ours began with desperation and risotto. But it was real, messy and complicated, and marked by violence I'd never fully understand, but real. And every morning, when I woke up in his arms and went downstairs to make him breakfast, when I stood in that cathedral kitchen and created food that was love made tangible, I knew I'd made the right choice. I'd chosen the monster who saw me as human, and he'd chosen the girl who fed his soul along with his body. We were broken things that had found each other in the darkness, and together, we'd forged something unbreakable.